What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here in Orlando after the Celtics 111-107 win over the Magic to improve to 5-6 on the season and to bounce back from a tough loss here in this very same building on Friday night. This was my favorite win of the season. They've had some impressive ones. Obviously, the Cleveland Cavaliers one sticks out. Good clutch win over the Philadelphia 76ers last week. But top to bottom, this was a team win. This was the epitome of a team win, in my opinion. And it was so fun, honestly, just rewarding, gratifying to be in the building and watch this game. So I was very excited to podcast. I was very excited to pull out the things that I found most encouraging about this game because ultimately there was a lot to love. And this is a good Magic team that I think is better than their record. And this is a Celtics team that has struggled to close out clutch games. They were 1-4 in clutch time games entering this one, their only win coming against the 76ers, and that one they almost blew. So it's been a struggle in the clutch for them to kind of pull out these wins, which when you think about it, it makes complete sense when you have a brand new roster, a lot of guys that are not used to playing in big time minutes and not used to playing with one another. So it's not really an indictment on anybody except for the inexperience, the collective inexperience that this group has. But tonight they really needed this one. You don't want to fall to 4-7. The difference between 4-7 and 5-6, in my opinion, feels pretty big. And so you're trying to make a playoff push, which I know not all the fans are, but the players certainly are, the coaches certainly are. This was, I don't want to say a must-win game, but a pivotal one in the standings. And so I'm going to start first thing first is the fact that they were able to execute in the clutch was important here. And I'll give a shout out to three particular 3-point shots that went in that we're probably not talking about this game in the way that we are if they don't. The first was Jaylen Brown's top of the key for his 27th point. This game was a little bit of a struggle for Jaylen, which by his own standards, like he finishes with 27. That's kind of just been his norm. He's averaging 28 points going into this game, 10 of 24 shooting. He had 4 turnovers. I think one of those was an offensive foul, which he's been getting, it seems like every game, at least one of those. But 6 of 7 from the line. I agree with him. I think his whistle sucks right now. So I think he should be getting to the line more. And the problem is that he's still seeking out the contact. So it's like he keeps doing the same thing and getting angry at the officials when he's not getting the call. And I look back and I'm like, okay, but he was fouled. So I don't really know what the solution is there, but he made it work in this one. Still kind of providing critical offense for the Celtics. But he hits the first top of the key 3. And then Derrick White hit the 3 that I thought was going to be the dagger. And Derrick, we'll talk more about Derrick in this podcast, but Derrick just totally seems to have like awoken on the offensive end. Just as far as his aggression, he's playing with like a level of swag that he didn't have a couple weeks back. 3 of 9 from 3 tonight, so it's not like he caught fire, but he looked better just the way that he was moving in this game. He looked like he was playing with more joy and more bounce than I've seen from him in recent weeks. So he hits the second 3, which I thought was going to be the dagger, but it ended up not being the dagger. And then the Celtics really wanted to score on the final possession. They're up by 2. Clock's winding down. Jaylen has the ball. He finds Payton, and Payton swings it right to Jordan Walsh in the corner, and Jordan Walsh hits the 3, and that was the coolest moment of the year by far. Bench goes crazy. Ugo, Luka Garza, all these guys are tackling Jordan at center court, and Jordan said himself he didn't even realize, he didn't even know what to think when he went in. He didn't even really process, and you can see he doesn't even immediately celebrate, but here they are now with a 5-point lead, and that's the dagger. That's the game. For sure, the best moment of Jordan Walsh's NBA career. And Jordan, a guy who was getting DNPs about a week and a half ago and has pretty much been getting DNPs since he was drafted, just had the game of his life tonight. And the best part is I think it's something that is replicable. He plays 25 minutes, including the entire fourth quarter, which if you told me going to tonight with a fully healthy roster, is Jordan Walsh going to play the entire fourth quarter, I would have never believed it. But he's been inching towards that, starting with the Wizards game where he gave them really good minutes and helped turn that game around. He built upon that on Friday versus Orlando, and he had a few mistakes late in that game. But once again, I thought that his first half stint was part of the group that turned it from a double-digit deficit in the first quarter. This is Friday's game to right back in it. So 3 games in a row now, Jordan has been critical for this team defensively. Offensively, as far as crashing the glass, I think he is such a good rebounder. The numbers don't always demonstrate how good of a rebounder somebody is. Like I have the box score. This is Joe's box score right in front of me. I'm sitting in Joe's post-game presser seat. But Jordan Walsh in this game has 5 rebounds, 6 rebounds, sorry, 1 offensive. But there were a couple of moments where he got a board that otherwise would have been Orlando's. And I wish there was a stat for that because there are contested versus uncontested rebounds, but that's not what appears in the box score. And I haven't dove into those numbers from tonight yet. So big rebounding game for him, 4 assists as well, 2 steals. Feels like he should have had more. He had a couple of deflections in addition to those steals. Just awesome defense, and then he goes 2 for 2 from 3 in the fourth quarter. I thought that his first fourth quarter 3, which was early in the fourth, was going to be his biggest 3 of the fourth quarter, but then the biggest 3 of the fourth quarter ends up being the one that he hits with just a few seconds to spare, that ultimately solidified this win and kind of created this memorable scene here at the Kia Center. So huge shout out to Jordan Walsh. It's really cool to see a guy who spent his whole rookie season in Maine and spent his whole sophomore season getting DNPs on a completely loaded roster that we all know was littered with talent that, was going to be really hard for him to break through. And then his third year, which is the year of opportunity, the year that there are minutes to grab, and obviously Tatum sidelined and a bunch of guys traded this summer, like that was going to be the season that he might end up playing. And I think when you look at Jordan, it didn't go off, it didn't start on the track that he had anticipated. Like he was getting DNPs every single night in the first couple weeks of the season. He only appeared in garbage time minutes. He really wasn't playing. And so, this was just this week that everything kind of turned around for him between the Wizards win and then the 2 Orlando games. Like this has been a massive, massive week for his NBA career. And I asked him earlier here in Orlando, like, it looked like you were kind of playing for your life. And he was like, absolutely, I was. Like, that's, he is playing for his life. And he said, I'm running around, like, I don't even know what I'm doing sometimes, but I know that I'm confusing my opponent. And, he's going to learn to harness that more and more. But this is a guy that was drafted when he was 19 years old in the second round. Like, I think a lot of people viewed him as a bust because he didn't immediately impact the Celtics and didn't play in his second year, and had a really tough summer league, which I think did a lot for his reputation among fans that don't necessarily see the day in and day out work. His second year summer league, this past one was pretty good. But in my opinion, he's right on track. I mean, this was the year that he was supposed to become a rotation player, and right now he's showcasing what that can look like. It doesn't mean that it's all going to work out. It doesn't mean that he's going to play 25 minutes a night every single night. He's not going to. But tonight he did it on all fronts, on the defensive end, as a passer, as a playmaker, just leaving it all out there. And then obviously the 3-point shooting is going to be critical for any of these guys if they're going to make it in the NBA, right? Jordan, Ugo, Baylor, like you got to hit your threes because there's other guys that are going to be able to do it, right? So it's great to see Jordan's threes go down tonight. And I think his shot's looking a lot better. I watch him in warmups before every game. And, people think warmups, like it's just shooting, like standstill shooting or running around shooting. But they do these drills, like the player development staff do these drills with the players. Today it was Baylor, Jordan, and Ugo that were doing these 3-point shooting drills. And you have coaches actually going out and contesting shots, talking trash, like getting under their skin. And this is like motion, with defense, with multiple defenders making reads and all that. And Jordan did not miss. And I turned to Jack Simone and I was like, he is making everything. And that has been the case increasingly throughout his career. Like he started off as a shaky shooter during these drills and now he's a really good one. And I know that it's just shooting drills and it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a great shooter in games. But right now we're seeing the fruits of that work and of that labor. And Joe Mazzulla said, he has been working really, really hard behind the scenes. He's learned how to work behind the scenes. And I asked Jordan about that post game. Got drafted by the Celtics, or is it something that you kind of developed as you became a professional?
Definitely something I feel like I developed for sure. The first year having guys like Al there, watching them, obviously my first year, we won it all. I didn't really know what the expectation was. I didn't know how to prepare for a game. I didn't know what it looked like. I was just a kid coming out of college just wanting to play, and now seeing that and new guys coming in and showing me how it was done, JT showing me, now I'm trying to follow that, that mold and take their preparation so that I'll be ready for the next opportunity.
He has spoken at length about the mentorship that he's received as a young player on the Celtics. And now here he is at 22 years old and he is impacting winning. And I think you have to credit the guys that aren't even in this locker room anymore for helping prepare him for this moment. And so I have always been a fan of his game. I've always been a fan in theory of what he can bring to an NBA team, but he just wasn't there yet. And I think he's starting to be there. And Joe said it best post game, like he can't let up now that he has this opportunity. He can't let up and kind of get comfortable. And I think that's the truth for him, for Josh, for a lot of these guys that have had these kind of breakthrough moments. Ugo as well. Ugo saw all the hype after New York. Like you can't get comfortable because what makes these guys great is that they're playing harder than everybody else, right? So Jordan tonight played harder than everybody else, and he has been doing that all week, and he's going to have to keep doing that if he's going to carve out an NBA career, and I think that he can do it. So super fun to watch. I watched him his whole rookie season in Maine. He's a really nice guy, great teammate, really hard worker, and so you're starting to see kind of how it could all translate. He's, this contract's not even fully guaranteed. Like he has to be full in January. His contract is going to become fully guaranteed. Like he's literally fighting for his basketball life. And so just an awesome, awesome moment there to close this game and to secure, as I said, a really critical win. And on that note, I'll mention his partner in crime tonight, Ugo, who played about half the minutes that Jordan played, but in Ugo's 12 minutes, he was a plus 19. This is a guy who is going to become the master of the box score doesn't capture his impact. He had 2 steals, a rebound, an assist, and a 3 in this game in his 12 minutes. But he was a plus 19, and that's not a coincidence. He just creates havoc. He creates chaos. I tweeted this during the game, but I think that he is the next great Celtics defender. I stand by that. I really don't think I'm a prisoner of the moment with Ugo. I have said this before, but I knew nothing about this guy when he was drafted. Like, he was on my list of prospects people who do this full time, the scouting, part full time, said, keep your eye out on Ugo. He didn't play much in Real Madrid, but he's talented. He has the athleticism and all that. And the day they drafted him, I was stunned. I thought they were going to go for one of these bigs that were available. But here we were, with Ugo. And, I think that the reality is that defensively he has translated to something that I did not anticipate him be doing in his first year, let alone maybe ever, because I didn't realize what an incredible defender he can be. So he's 19. He's going to learn a lot about the personnel tendencies and about, how to avoid the fouls. I think the fouls have been a little bit of a challenge for him early on in his career. But you can see it. You can see the vision. Like, he has this defensive instinct, this defensive playmaking instinct, the way he gets around screens. Like, oh my gosh, it's so fun to watch. And so when those two guys are playing together, it's like you have these two guys running with their heads cut off. And for an opposing team's offense, it's so disruptive. They're young, they're energetic, they're not playing heavy minutes also, so they can come in and just create chaos in those stints. And to think that he's so young is just kind of, it makes you go crazy thinking about like where he might actually end up going and where he might end up. And so this wasn't like, he's not really like a big part of this game in the sense of he only played 12 minutes, but he was a big part of that fourth quarter unit that went on that massive, I think it was a 16-5 run to open the fourth quarter. It was him, it was Jordan, it was Luka Garza that I'll talk about more about in a moment. But even in the games where he only plays 12, 13 minutes, I feel like he has such a big impact. Like, he makes the most of those minutes without really costing them anything because not taking shots. Like, his weaknesses are kind of hidden. I thought that the dump off pass that he had to Keita was maybe the best pass Keita got all night, right? So again, he's going to become a better offensive player and a more polished version of himself, but the instincts are just so there. Like, I'm so confident this guy's going to work out. And it's remarkable to think just how young he is and how little time he's spent even in this country. And already he's kind of really figured out how to do his part in these games. And he's super fun to watch on the bench too. He's like the most emotional guy as far as being excited and being hyped. Like, when Jordan hit that 3, it was like I immediately panned over to Ugo to see his reaction. So I love watching those two guys play. I love when they share the floor, and we'll see kind of how it all pans out as the year goes on. Maybe some nights Ugo will play more. Maybe some nights Jordan will play more. Maybe some nights they'll play a lot together. Maybe some nights they'll get DNPs. I mean, I don't want, one game's one game, but right now I see the vision with what the Celtics were going for when they selected both of those guys. Jordan a couple years ago, early in the second, and this most recent summer, picking Ugo late in the first round. In addition to those two guys, I want to give a big shout out to Derrick White, who I think has received a lot of scrutiny this season, and I guess rightfully so. I mean, I never really want to see guys be overly scrutinized or like on the receiving end of hate or anything like that. But Derrick's had a tough start to the year. He was shooting 33% going into tonight. And he just hasn't had quite the role that I think people anticipated he was going to make this big leap entering this year, with a bigger usage rate and opportunity. And I predicted he was going to be an all-star, which he's currently not on a pace to do. But in this game early on, he was super aggressive. He took 9 shots in the first quarter, had 11 points in that first quarter. And right away, I was like, okay, this is what happens when Derrick's looking for his own shot. He's calling his own number. And he wants to shoot. It's not just like, okay, he's shooting because he should, and he should get past the slump. So that was really cool to see. He finishes this game with a very impressive kind of all-around stat line. He was 21 points, 7 of 18 from the field, 3 of 9 from 3. So like I said, the 3-point slump is not necessarily like over and done with. But he also has 3 steals and 4 assists and 3 rebounds. I'm like struggling to read this box score right now. It's been a long day. But the 3 steals, he should have more steals than that because sometimes he creates a steal that somebody else gets just by his elite defense. But to me, it feels like Derrick White looked like himself tonight. It doesn't mean that he had the best shooting game, 7 of 18, still inefficient by his standards. But he is going to be just fine. And I think you saw the beginning of his confidence start to come back. I wish Derrick never lost his confidence because he's a great player, and in theory, like he should never lose his confidence. But he's human, and he's talked about how he does. He is hard on himself. Last year, he talked pretty openly about how he lost his joy for playing, for showing up every day. So I think you saw moments of that earlier this year, and I think it's starting to come around. And he embraced his parents who were sitting at the baseline after the game. I think it was his dad's birthday, so happy birthday, Richard White. But Derrick really put together a great two-way game. And defensively, I think, sometimes he just has an outsized impact on the defensive end. And tonight was certainly one of those nights where he was just causing havoc. There was one play that resulted in an Anfernee Simons three, but everybody was running around on the floor, diving for loose balls. Jalen's on the floor, guys were diving out of bounds. But when I went back and I rewatched that play, I was like, oh, that play was actually all Derrick. Like Derrick was the one that got two tip from behinds that resulted in the Celtics actually gaining possession. So he's going to be instrumental for what this team is able to do this season, and beyond this season. Like he is just so important for this core, for this future of this organization. Like they view him as a critical piece. And so I think the first 10 games of the year, he wasn't quite himself. And hopefully he starts coming back to being the guy that he has been in the past and that I think everybody thinks he can continue to be. I want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at PrizePicks. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Another awesome Patriots win here in Florida. Actually, Celtic Boston sports teams won 2-0 on Sunday. And you can use the PrizePicks app to pick the players that you are most excited about, whether that is Drake May for his rushing yards, for his rushing touchdowns, passing touchdowns, or pass yards. You can make your selections. PrizePicks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. PrizePicks puts their users first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. PrizePicks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit, which is super helpful, obviously. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. So I mentioned before the break, I mentioned Jordan Walsh's big night. I mean, he's the headliner for this one. I mentioned Ugo's 12 minutes and just being a plus 19 and just wreaking havoc on the defensive end and what I think he can become is just ridiculous. And then Derrick White, who, was the third leading scorer in this game and continues to just showcase what he can do for this team. And I think on the defensive end is sometimes where his impact can be a little bit overlooked or lost because there's a reason why he's still out there and the reason why he's so important even when his shot's not falling. Outside of those three guys, I think I would have to mention Anfernee Simons, who I don't even know where this game goes if Anfernee Simons does not have that ridiculous first half heater. He scored 23 points in the first half. Actually all 25 in the first half. He was scoreless in the second. But in just 22 minutes, he does all this damage. And he also changed the way Orlando had to defend him. And defend the Celtics in their pick and roll coverage. And so that was the best heater I've watched in a really long time. Definitely the best by any player this season. But it was one of the best first half performances from a scoring standpoint that any Celtics ever had. So Anfernee Simons, they're going to continue to find ways to leverage him and to utilize him because what he can do offensively is really unique. There's not a lot of guys that can score the way that he can, and certainly not on this roster. And I asked Jalen Brad about it post-game, and he said, we have to be open-minded. We have to find ways to get him going, I think is what the implication there. And he only took 13 shots in this game, but it certainly was pivotal to the Celtics kind of, limiting that. They were down by as many as 12 in the first half. And it would have been more if Anfernee had not caught fire the way that he did. And we've seen him kind of get hot in spurts multiple times. Fourth quarter for the previous game, he scored 11 points in the first 5 minutes there. So when he gets hot like that, it is a weapon for this team, and they need the offense. Like they have struggled offensively. Obviously, everybody knows that. And Jalen needs outlets. He needs other guys to play with. And I think you can see what he can do when he has the hot hand. And so big shout out to him. I think he's been a great teammate for everybody. Everybody's loved playing with him. And I think you can see that when he is playing with that confidence, with that flow, this team is very different. And so they're going to need to continue to find ways to harness that. And I do think that he has disproportionate amount of defensive mistakes compared to other guys in the roster. Like I really do like watching him play. He seems like a great guy, hard work on. I think he's playing really hard on the defensive end, so it's not for a lack of effort, but I understand where the reservation is sometimes for Joe to sideline him versus some of the other players on the team that are just more solid defensively. But he's gotten better. I mean, he hasn't been like a horrible defender the way that he was advertised to be entering the season. But we'll see kind of how it all shakes up. But definitely a massive, massive game for him. His best offensive game of the year, best game of the year, I should say. And in addition to Simons, I have to mention somebody else who had maybe the best game of his NBA career, and that is Luka Garza. Luka Garza, he was maybe the MVP in this one in a funny way. I don't think he's going to get the appropriate attention because 17 minutes, he scored 16 points in those minutes. He was a +9, 8 rebounds, 4 of them on the offensive end, 3 assists. He was 7 of 8 from the field. He had 1 of 2 from 3. Luka Garza has received a lot of criticism in the first 10 games of the season. I think a lot of people have kind of wondered what it is that he even brings to the table. I've seen a lot of discourse around that, and Keita has been the better option, and the plus minus numbers heavily point in Keita's direction. In tonight's game, Garza was the better center. I mean, I think he played better tonight, and offensively, they need every point that he provided in this game. That fourth quarter unit that I mentioned in the first half of the fourth, he was on the floor for that and was instrumental crashing the glass, a couple and-1s, and then Keita fouls out and he comes back in and closes that game. And I asked him post-game, like, where does this game rank among your best NBA games? And he was like, well, just closing was super cool. The actual ability to close this game was super unique for him. I don't think he's had that opportunity yet. So Luka Garza, they can have him for 2 years if they want him. Obviously, they have to figure out the front court rotation, and there's been a lot of challenges there. Xavier Tillman was back with the team. Tillman was not present on Friday for personal reasons. So he was back, but was a DNP. And Keita, I thought, didn't have his best game. He struggled a little bit uncharacteristically in some moments. But Luka Garza came in and just gave them what they needed as far as production in the front court. So massive game for him. He spoke post-game. You can check out his entire post-game on CLNS Media, as well as who else spoke today? Jaylen Brown. Jaylen almost always speaks. Joe Mazzulla and Luka Garza and Jordan Walsh. Luka Garza and Jordan Walsh were fun ones because it's always fun to talk to guys after career nights. And I would say both of those guys had maybe the best game of their NBA career and played some of the most pivotal moments, actually being on the floor to close this one out. So when you think about it, on one hand, this team is really talented. And sometimes I can talk myself into like, well, this team should be really good. They have Jaylen, they have Peyton, they have Derrick, they have Anfernee. Like, they do have some really talented players. And then you look at it another direction and you're like, Luka Garza and Jordan Walsh just closed this game out. And those are guys that literally haven't played in the NBA, really. Like, they haven't played real NBA minutes. And yet they were able to do that still. So that's really impressive. And it's really fun as a fan of the game of basketball. And I, try to be as objective as possible and all that. But as a fan of the sport and as someone who is around this team all the time, it is always extra meaningful to see guys like have career moments and career nights. And so Luka was that. He played with a ton of energy in this one. And I asked him post game because sometimes I feel like it's like, okay, Sam Hauser caught fire or Anfernee Simons caught fire. And the average fan can see that and be like, okay, that was flow state. They caught fire. And I asked Luka, like, do you kind of have that too as a post player? Like, and he was like, yeah, like you kind of start attracting the ball and you get rebounds. The ball kind of finds you. And I think in this one, he just had this flow state that looks different when you're a post player and you're not just necessarily hot from 3, but is nonetheless like pretty special to watch. And you could see in that fourth quarter that it seemed like the game was just clicking for him. And he always plays really hard. He said he was disappointed with his effort in the previous game. I rewatched that game. I think he played really hard, but his timing maybe wasn't as right and he just didn't have it. Tonight he had it. I don't think this is a guy that's going to have it every single night, but this was a game that they don't win if he doesn't play the way that he did. So how many of those are there going to be this season? I don't know, but he's on a minimum deal and he certainly kind of gave the Celtics everything they could have asked for in this one. So a lot of fun performances tonight. Ugo, Jordan, Luka, all big minutes. Derrick White looking more like himself. Jaylen Brown continues to be Jaylen Brown. I mean, he's been doing it all year. It's been, shouldering the load offensively. And this wasn't, you didn't get a ton from Josh relative to the last few games here. Peyton had a very quiet game by his standards, 5 points on 2 of 8 shooting, though I will say I thought his defense was really good tonight. And he just does well defensively against this Magic team. That stood out to me in the playoffs last year. Like, Paolo gets Peyton on him and he's like, never mind. So full team effort. The only guys that didn't play in this one are Baylor, Chris Boucher, and Xavier Tillman. And I think you're going to see a couple of guys, be the odd man out of these rotations night in and night out. And those were the guys tonight. So Celtics, the road trip continues. They'll face the 76ers on Monday. I should say Tuesday. So probably when you're watching this podcast tomorrow. And then they have a back-to-back, flying back home, facing the Grizzlies. Like, that should be a winnable game because the Grizzlies have struggled this year. But the schedule is not letting up. I can just say from a reporter who has been at every single game so far in person, I feel drained by all the travel and all that. So I can only imagine how the players feel who have to worry about recovery and all of that. So been a lot of fun. Celtics are 5-6. I probably would have projected they'd be like 6-5 right now on pace. So I had them winning 45 games this year. So maybe the Jazz game is the one that really kind of got away from them. But overall, I think you have to like a lot of what they've been able to do on the floor. Maybe not so much always their execution, but certainly a lot of what they've demonstrated there, how hard they play. I love this half-court defense. It is so fun to watch. I love what we're seeing from some of the younger guys. And I've loved seeing Jalen as the number one guy and just how much he's been able to do on the offensive end. So with that, fun game, fun win. I'm looking forward to watching this one. Had a blast being here in the building for it. We'll thoroughly enjoy seeing how it was called by Drew and Scal. As always, thank you for watching You Got Boston. Let me know what you think about this game. Let me know what stood out to you. I always read the comments every single morning and check out what you guys all thought. I recognize all the usernames. I know kind of who's high on who and who's low on who and all of that. So leave a like, leave a comment, tell a friend. If you're looking for a positive Celtics podcast in this tumultuous year, You Got Boston on CLNS Media is the one for you. So as always, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your week.